So our first speaker today, I'm really pleased to say, is the famous artist Birdy Rose, and she's going to talk to us about creating a new counterculture. So welcome, Birdy, and over to you.
I'm the famous artist Birdy Rose. To anyone who doesn't know who I am, what I do, I have been an artist for a really long time. I actually started painting over 10 years ago, and I met my partner who's a musician, and we actually lived in a van for 7 years, and we were touring on the road, and we were doing gigs and doing festivals. He was constantly booked, and I was doing my art and selling prints at festivals and gigs. And over the years, we just got more and more popular in what we were doing on a very small scale on the grassroots scene in the UK. And in 2017, we started to notice that the scene was changing, and that the attitude, I thought the attitude was changing, but I don't think it actually was. I think it's always been like this. There's always been an authoritarian streak in art, and I don't think I noticed it because I wasn't one of the sore thumbs that was sticking out and creating chaos, if that makes sense. I was conforming by not poking my head out of the parapet. So, and that wasn't intentional. I mean, I've always been a little bit sort of, I don't want to be told what to do. So it wasn't intentional that I was a conformist, but I just wasn't controversial. And a lot of my art was about escapism. It was escaping into another world. And I used to have an attitude of, I don't want to be political with my art because I want to create another world to escape into, because the culture and the politics is so stressful. So as I was noticing the atmosphere change around her, I noticed this trans thing creeping into our environment. And we had some friends that were identifying as trans back then, and I didn't really mind it because I didn't think it was a big deal. I didn't know anybody was going to start actually saying that they've changed into the opposite sex and that I have to conform to this and that I have to comply. I had no idea that was going to happen. I just saw it as people doing their thing and not really any of my business. It doesn't affect me. And then it did start to affect me because on the music and art scene, more and more people were talking about inclusivity and diversity and how we have to respect pronouns, and this trans rights thing was creeping up a bit more. So I started looking into it. Obviously, I found the Magdalene Burns videos on YouTube, and I'm sure everybody knows who Magdalene Burns is. And I started to understand this is actually a real thing. This is like people are actually saying that lesbians have to sleep with men and stuff like that. And so that came into my environment as an artist. There were musicians that identified as trans, and one of them said something about how, you know, people are campaigning for the law to change so that if I want to sleep with somebody, I have to tell them I'm trans. And I remember saying, well, you know, if you are getting into an intimate relationship with somebody, you should really be honest about who you are. And so that became a point of contention in our scene and among our musician friends. I didn't realise. I thought I was just giving my opinion and that's that. I thought it was just common sense. But I didn't realise that this was getting people's backs up. And obviously I started watching Magdalene Burns videos after that. And then I got cancelled for something else, which I won't go into right now, but I got cancelled for something else. And that was my first time being cancelled, but it wasn't the proper cancellation. The proper cancellation came in 2020 in the middle of lockdowns. And what happened was I had started drawing portraits of women that I really liked. And I think the intention for me was, first of all, portraits are my worst thing as an artist. I've always dreaded portraits. So I thought I should challenge myself and work on the thing that I feel the least confident in. So I started drawing portraits, and I wanted to draw portraits of women who have been dehumanized in our culture. Women like Magdalene Burns, Kelly J. Keane, women like J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling, Magdalene Burns and Kelly J. Keane were the first three that I drew. And they were the first ones that came to my mind that I want to show their humanity. I want to put out a picture of them and put out like a really good quote that they've said, and really just sort of like, I like the idea. I didn't even put their names on it because I like the idea of people sharing it, not knowing who this is and liking what they've said and just taking people on face value, and that's not something we're doing much of anymore. So that happened, and within days, I got cancelled by the people that we were on the music scene with, obviously because the atmosphere had changed around them as well. Or maybe, like I said, it's always been that way. There's always been an authoritarian streak in art and music. It's like you have to be unique, you have to be yourself, but do it the way we say or else. And that's how it is. And there's a lot of bad blood on the art and music scenes in the UK, especially the grassroots, in my experience. I've never been in like the elitist art world or in galleries and things like that. I've always been a bit more on the DIY side of things. But there is a sense of like, there's these unspoken rules and you have to abide by the code or you get kicked out, kind of like a little bit culty. And so it got me thinking. I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Some of you that follow me online know that I think about my cancellation a lot and what happened and why we've been exiled from the art and music world. And, you know, why my partner can't get any gigs at the moment because he's associated with me, why I lost my livelihood a few years ago, although I've made a comeback, a pretty strong one. And I've been thinking about what's gone wrong with art and music and the art world and writers and poets and comedians and painters and illustrators and all of these people and, you know, singers, songwriters, musicians, dancers. What's going on that made the whole environment completely captured by something that I can only think of as a quasi-religious ideology? It's a belief system. It's faith-based. And historically, I would have always thought that the coolest artists and the coolest musicians and the coolest writers were not into that. They're like anti-establishment. They're going against the grain. They're the counterculture. They're exploring weird ideas, sure, but they're not going to force you to believe in them. They're not going to bully you or become authoritarian and religious in their approach. In theory, I mean, there have been artists that have done stuff like that, but I would have thought that the cool part of art and the cool culture was always going against the grain. And then I was looking at like how so many people on the scene we've been on consider themselves to be this anti-establishment, sort of like punk essence, sort of like the new age punks, and they're not. They're completely conformist. They're very authoritarian. They're very miserable. They buy into every corporation, everybody, every institution you can think of supports them with their weird ideas. And it got me thinking about how are we going to move forward as a creative culture and what do we have to do as artists? And my message is to any artist out there, we need to get together and we need to create a counterculture that's so cool, that's so unbelievably adventurous and honest and genuinely sincere, not this fake sincerity, be yourself bullshit, like actual sincerity and honesty and daring to just put your art out there or put your comedy out there and put your writing out there without worrying about whether it's going to be approved of. I want that. And I want that because I think that's going to be so enticing to the next generation, going to be unbelievably appealing and refreshing to see artists just doing their thing and not caring. It doesn't matter whether you believe in this religion or not. You should be able to just do your thing. And that's the spirit I wanted to sort of encourage and get everybody in on. So that's what I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about what the next step is for art and what the culture should be and how it should move forward. I don't know if anybody else has suggestions, and maybe later on people can talk about it. I'll try and stick around for it. And it's just, I don't want to lose art. I think the quickest way to kill off art and music and the creative cultures in general is this sort of pernicious ideology that is stamping out the life of creativity, because being creative is a really brave thing to do, genuinely brave, not like the stunning and brave like men are when they put on a dress, but actually genuinely brave thing to do, to pull your heart and soul out and put a piece of you into a bit of art or a song or make a dance routine or whatever it is you're doing. You write a story, you write a book. And it takes a lot of bravery to show that to people, knowing that they could criticize you. And artists don't like being criticized because they've got a little bit of an ego sometimes and it hurts. But you know that the world could poo-poo your thing that you've spent hours on, that you love, that is a piece of you that comes from your mind, and you know that people could hate it. And that is a vulnerability that is very difficult to live with sometimes. And people are being cowards to not embrace that vulnerability in art. They're being cowards when they just follow the established, current, approved of message, and they try to toe the line. It's a different thing to not having the incentive to be political with your art, because you don't have to be, although some people will argue that saying that art is not political is a political statement within itself. But I think as an artist, you do have a duty to reflect the culture around you. And I say duty loosely because I don't think you have to, but all art has been an indication of the times that that artist is living through. We can look at art and music and writing, and we can sort of get a real sort of like sensory indulgence into a time capsule, into what their life was like and what they were living through. So we do have kind of a duty to historically record that in our art. And it is cowardice to not take part in that. It's cowardice to just repeat the current approved of mantras within your art and to just get by and be approved of and make sure that you're celebrating the new religion. I think that's cowardice. I think artists need to step up and they need to speak up and they need to use their art to do it, because not everybody has to go online and do YouTube videos or shout on Twitter. You've got an ability, and if you've got an ability, use it. And I think the counterculture to what's going on at the moment needs to be that. Art is so powerful. People use art all over the world because it's universal. Like if you've got a picture, even music in any language, it's universal. You can feel it, you can see it, you're using your senses. You don't have to use words. That's everything that I've got to say. That was a mega rant for me.
Thank you, but that's so fantastic. And I've got a question. How do you so I'm going to add a spotlight. What, because you have to make money,
yeah,
so you want to have a broad appeal. How do you reconcile that? Because you're making so how do you just explain
no, I
that?
never listen. I don't mean listen authoritatively. I mean it's just something I say. I never really had much money to begin with, right? When we were living on the road, the whole point of living on the road was, first of all, we couldn't afford a flat, which more for us because the prices have gone up now, right? So, but the thing is, we never had much to begin with, and the idea of us living on the road was the freedom to do our music. So with our costs were not high on purpose, because we knew if we had a flat, we'd have to maintain it by getting a job doing something else. And we were in our 20s, and we knew that that was prime time to give it a shot. Go for it. If you want to be a musician, I want to be an artist, go for it, do it. And so the money aspect of it didn't really come into it until I started selling my paintings, and that was just before I got cancelled the first time. I would say I didn't have a choice. When I got cancelled the first time, it was because somebody made up a lie about me that everybody believed. So that was really nothing to do with the ideological thing, although that is tied into it. People did believe the lie because the person who made up the lie about me identifies as trans, so they believed the trans person. I'm getting to the point. But the point is, I didn't have a choice when my livelihood got stripped away from me. So when I came back with my art and I did my portraits, I didn't do it with in mind that I need to make money from art. I did it with in mind of, well, everything's been taken off of me anyway. What have I got to lose? I'll do what I want. And I've always had a kind of I'll do what I want attitude anyway, but I didn't really invest that into my art. I used my art to make beautiful things that were just this other world in my head. I didn't know I had it in me to do this with it. And I caught it in the corner up there. Somebody said art is a weapon. Damn right it is. It can be used as a weapon, and it can be good and it can be dangerous as well. Does that make sense? Like a lot of the art nowadays is propaganda. To an extent, art has always been propaganda as well, because in the old days, it would have been paid for by the church or the state. So, and it would have been that message that they want the people to have, and people would have been illiterate and they would have used art to get those messages. So to an extent, it's always propaganda, and I do get accused of being propaganda, but that's another argument. People are really have like an icky feeling about money on the art and music scene. They don't like it. They don't want you to make money, and you shouldn't say that you want to make money. But I'm against that now, because I think that's just a way of holding people back and shaming them into not being ambitious. I think you should be ambitious. I'm also a realist. I think we should be realistic as well, but you should be ambitious, and there's no shame in making money from your art. So when I lost my income, because I didn't have a choice, I didn't really have anything to lose. I think I am in a position now where I have something to lose, but I don't give a shit because I've lost it all before, and I'll fight for it all again. Does that make sense? If I have to get another job at McDonald's again, which is what I did the first time I got cancelled, I will. It doesn't matter. I'll still keep doing what I'm doing, regardless of the situation I'm thrown into.
Do you think that quite a lot of the artists don't agree with the transgender ideology, and they're doing it just to fit in? So have you had some of them say to you, look, actually, I agree with you, I'm just too scared to speak out?
One of the things that happened the first time I really got cancelled was one of the musicians that I did a lot of artwork for, and I did his album covers and stuff, actually phoned me up and said that one of the people cancelling me has essentially threatened him. Basically said, your new album cover is by the Famous Artist Birdy Rose. She's a transphobe, and essentially, if you don't want everybody thinks you're a transphobe as well, you need to not work with her. He looked at my website, because she used, look at her website, you'll see it for yourself, as sort of like an excuse. So he looked at my website and he phoned me and he said he didn't see anything wrong with what I was doing. Like, I don't understand. I get the feeling he doesn't agree with what's going on, but he did lose me as an artist over that. And the extent of the cowardice, and it's not nice for me to say because I like the guy, but the extent of the cowardice is that he actually asked me to continue to be his artist, but maybe go under a different name so that he doesn't get in trouble, right? And I said no. And that was painful to me. And I don't like to call him a coward, but it is cowardice, because it ain't just about sticking up for me or sticking up for my fella. It's about sticking up for yourself as an artist and telling people, you're not going to tell me how to do my art or who to associate with or how to run my business or how this is going to go. You're not in charge of me. And I, as an artist, have artistic freedom and the right to speak and express myself as I see fit. And I can work with whoever I want. You can't tell me what to do. But these people, they're not thinking of it that way. They're thinking of saving their own art. But in the long run, what they've done is given everybody a free path to tell them what to do, to boss them around, to restrict their artistic freedom. It ain't about sticking up for me. It's about sticking up for yourself.